Welcome everyone, I'm Ian Luke, and this is the Real Supernatural Events channel. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming videos, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Have sweet nightmares, and don't forget to leave your bedroom light on. The world we see and touch is not the only one that exists. There is a parallel reality, veiled by a thin curtain, where ancient and unfathomable forces dwell. These forces, often ignored or underestimated, can manifest in unexpected ways, bringing with them mysteries that challenge our logic and faith. Many believe that the supernatural is merely a product of imagination or ancient myths, yet those who venture into this territory know that the truth is far more complex and dangerous. Occult and magical practices have fascinated and seduced people throughout the centuries, promising control over invisible forces and answers to existential questions. However, few recognize the risks that accompany this path. Every ritual, every invocation is an open door to something that cannot be fully predicted or controlled. What begins as mere curiosity or a quest for power can swiftly transform into a nightmare, unleashing irreversible consequences. My story is a real and terrifying account of someone who dared to confront the shadows in an attempt to save a loved one. More than just a suspense tale, it is a testimony to human fragility when faced with the supernatural, and to the steep price of meddling with forces that dwell in darkness. Before moving forward, reflect. Are we truly prepared to understand that which we cannot see? The supernatural does not reveal itself solely out of curiosity. It exacts a price, and often, that price is far too high. Take this as a warning. Magical practices, even when undertaken with the best intentions, are like playing with fire. The unknown may appear alluring, yet there is a reason why certain doors remain closed. Once you open one, you can never be sure what awaits on the other side, or what might slip through and invade your life. May this account serve as both an alert and a call for reflection. The supernatural is not a domain to be explored without caution. Remember, what you are seeking might very well find you first. My name is Tony. I am 56 years old, married, and a father of 2 daughters. We currently reside in Vancouver. What I'm about to share with you occurred to me just under 6 months ago. The experience remains vivid in my memory, having deeply marked me. To be honest, I do not believe I will ever be able to forget what I experienced that night. The sensations I felt in the nights that followed were equally terrifying, something that still robs me of sleep. It all began on an ordinary night. I was at home preparing for bed when my phone rang. It was well past 11 o'clock at night. Nowadays, when someone calls instead of sending a message, we find it odd, especially at that hour. I glanced at the screen and saw it was my sister. My heart leapt. In moments like these, it is inevitable to think of the worst. I answered the phone, and my sister, extremely nervous, began speaking rapidly and incoherently. I tried to calm her down, asking her to breathe and explain slowly what was happening. What she said next sent a chill down my spine. "Come here now. Kate is not well." I asked what had happened, but she merely replied, "I can't explain now. Please, come quickly." I pressed on, asking if she had called an ambulance, but my sister screamed, desperate, "Come here now, Tony, please!" And then she hung up the phone. To better explain the situation, I need to provide some context. Kate is my niece, the eldest daughter of my sister. She is around 30 years old, and we have always shared a very close bond. Moreover, until 2 years ago, I was a pastor at a Protestant church. Today, I devote my studies to witchcraft and the occult. Both Kate and I have participated in magical rituals along with her parents and others. That very night, we had performed one of these rituals. As I drove as fast as I could to my sister's house, my thoughts were focused on one of the laws of witchcraft, the triple law. Basically, this law states that everything you do can return to you threefold. Awakening hidden forces demands responsibility, and you should only perform these rituals if you are sure the results are worth the risk. Upon arrival, I hurriedly parked my car and rushed into the house. I went straight to the room where we usually conduct our rituals. I switched on the light and checked every detail. The objects, their positions, the candles, everything appeared to be in its place. No material had left the circle. As I inspected, I heard a terrifying scream coming from inside. It was Kate. In that moment, I was certain something supernatural was unfolding. I raced further inside and found my sister on the verge of despair. She pointed toward Kate's room, urging me to go there immediately. Upon entering, I was confronted with a disturbing scene. Kate was sitting in an armchair, her eyes fixed on emptiness, utterly unresponsive. I knelt before her and asked what was happening, but she did not reply. I called her name several times and used words of power that usually work in such cases, yet nothing seemed to take effect. My sister explained that ever since we finished the ritual, Kate had begun to feel unwell. She complained of dizziness, headaches, and nausea. After taking a shower and lying down, she started screaming uncontrollably. My sister believed an oppressive spirit had latched onto her, but I knew it was something far greater. I placed my hand on Kate's forehead and noticed she was burning with fever. Her clothes were drenched in sweat, her hair stuck to her face, her skin extremely pale, and her lips utterly colorless. Her breathing was labored, and her eyes remained fixed on the void. When we removed her blouse to help cool her body, we saw something even more disturbing. The veins in her arms were swollen and red, forming patterns that resembled tree roots. That sight was terrifying. In that moment, there was no doubt left. A demon had taken residence in my niece's body. Invocation rituals are relatively common among practitioners of magic. They can be used to contact the dead, to forge pacts, or to obtain some spiritual favor. That day, the ritual we performed was meant to contact a beloved one of a participant who had recently passed away. I followed the instructions in our order's grimoire to the letter, not altering a single word. It was a procedure we had carried out many times without incident, but this time something had gone wrong. As I tried to decide what to do, a feeling of guilt and fear consumed me. The words of the triple law echoed in my mind. Perhaps we had invoked something far more powerful than we intended, or perhaps we had neglected to observe every rite. Whatever it was clear that Kate needed immediate help, and not just ordinary medical assistance. At that moment, I realized I was facing something far greater than I could comprehend or control, and the battle I was about to fight would not be an easy one. My niece stared at me with an expression I can hardly describe. It was as if she were dissecting me, reading my mind as though it were a scanner. It was as if she suddenly knew all my deepest fears and traumas. Her eyes, filled with malice, seemed to mock me, while a deep, distorted voice called me weak. I felt fear to the very core of my soul, but I couldn't back down. I gathered all the courage I had and demanded, "Tell me your name, demon." It laughed once more, and the room seemed to grow even darker. When she opened her mouth, a foul and suffocating stench spread through the air, as if something rotten was stuck in her throat. I knew I had to act fast. I immediately began reciting the words of power I had learned, but I also knew that, in cases like this, knowing the demon's name was essential for the ritual to work completely. Unfortunately, I didn't know it, which made everything even more dangerous. I had learned long ago that we must treat these entities with respect, for they are not even loyal to those who summon them. Leaning forward, I spoke firmly. "This girl is innocent and does not deserve to go through this. Go back to where you came from and leave my niece alone." I repeated the words of power, placing all my faith in those syllables. For a brief moment it seemed to work. The demon sat down, and my niece returned to her previous catatonic state, but this was far from a victory. My sister and brother-in-law were on the verge of despair. The accusatory looks they gave me were unbearable. My brother-in-law, with eyes full of tears and rage, grabbed my arm and shouted, "End this now! You are to blame, and I want my daughter back." I felt the weight of responsibility crushing my chest. If anything happened to her, I would never forgive myself. I decided there was no other choice but to take her to the place of rites, known as the field. This meant restarting the process from scratch, but now I was determined not to fail. The journey there was tense and terrifying. My niece wouldn't stop screaming, as if whatever was inside her knew its time was running out. Her voice was grotesque, shifting between human tones and something bestial. It felt like the night itself was watching us as we made our way to the site. As soon as we arrived, I began cleansing the space and reorganizing all the necessary elements for the ritual. On the ground, I drew the circle of power with precision, using coarse salt to reinforce the lines. Inside the circle, I traced a pentagram with my walnut wand. At the pentagram's points, I placed candles, crystals, amulets, and other sacred materials. Feeling the immense weight of responsibility on my shoulders, I stepped inside the circle and sat at the pentagram's center. I began reciting the words of power again, this time with all the faith I could summon. She stood outside the circle, staring at me with eyes that were not her own. Her expression was terrifying, and each time I spoke the words, she shuddered, as if something inside her was being forcibly pulled away. I repeated the words 7 times, feeling my voice echo through the space. With each repetition, I focused all my energy on the plea for that malevolent entity to leave my niece's body. Suddenly, the room seemed to freeze. I opened my eyes, and to my surprise, my niece was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room, supported by her parents. But before me, inside the circle, stood him. The demon that had caused so much suffering was finally visible, trapped within the boundaries I had drawn on the floor. The sight of that creature was terrifying. Its body seemed covered in a dense shadow, with distorted features and glowing eyes that pierced into my soul. The stench of rot and sulfur was almost unbearable. My knees trembled, but I knew I couldn't show weakness. This was the first time I had seen something so concrete, so real. No movie or image could describe the horror of that entity. My sister, realizing the gravity of the situation, grabbed a jar of coarse salt and reinforced the circle's lines. I stood up, facing the demon, and raised my voice, commanding it to return to the place from which it came. I repeated my order with all the authority I could gather, feeling the weight of the moment. Finally, the creature began to dissolve. Its form unraveled like smoke, and the foul stench vanished along with it. The room, which had felt suffocating before, became light once more. When everything was over, after composing myself physically and mentally, I broke the circle and removed the elements used in the ritual. My niece, still visibly shaken, told me she had witnessed everything from outside her body. She said the demon had been present since the beginning of the ritual we had performed earlier, watching everything until it found an opening to take control of her during the invocation. That event changed our lives forever. My niece and her parents decided to leave the order and sell the house. They were determined to start fresh somewhere far from all of this. As for me, I began questioning all my choices. Nothing I had learned in witchcraft had prepared me to face something like that. Now I wonder if it's worth continuing to deal with forces so far beyond our control. Today, when I look back, I see that this experience was a warning. Evil exists, and its greatest triumph is making us believe it isn't there. I will never forget that image, and as long as I live, I will carry the scars of a battle that nearly destroyed me completely. Luke and friends, I leave my gratitude to the channel for sharing my story, and to everyone who listened to it until the end. Wishing you all a great night and a wonderful life. Thank you very much for watching our video until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Have a haunted night, everyone, and see you next time.